Good morning, y'all. I have been up for a minute just thinking. So, if you've been following my channel for a minute, then you know that I was doing shadow work like 2016, more like 2017, 2018, I think. So, it's been like 5 years. And specifically, I was focusing the most on childhood trauma and the mother wound. And y'all, I just been laying in bed because my brain, like 3 days later, I'm still processing what just happened. And it's crazy because I remember doing another video about the results of shadow work, and like as if I wasn't getting any results. And it was silly of me to think that I'm going to get results in the moment. It's 5 years later. And the other day, my mom cried in my arms and she told me everything. Well, everything she could think of in the moment. I imagine her story is there's still much more to know, still much more to say. But my mom, listen, I think my mom cried one time in my entire life. And she wasn't in front of me. I just heard her. And like, I just heard like her and my stepdad in an argument, and I heard her crying. And I told my sister that she like sounded inhumane because she like never cries. I don't know. It sounded like a baby panda to me. And my sister was like dying laughing. And I was like, shut up. Like, the fact is, she actually has emotions. And it's like, for once, I saw her as like an actual human being and realized like my mom truly, truly, truly did the best that she could with the cards that she was given. And the brain rattling part isn't her truth because I understand why she kept it to herself. I probably wouldn't want my children to know that about me either, or about other family members and stuff. I think that she thought she was making the best decision by not saying a word of it, but she sees where it also was very damaging um, in her relationship with us. Like, it prohibited growth because we don't know who you are. You just seem like a damn tyrant and a maniac and a psycho. And she was talking, we got on the topic because she was talking about like grandmotherhood, about how as being a grandmother, like she really is seeing that children have their own personalities, and she realized she was wrong because she didn't get to know us and see that we have personalities. It was just more like, as I said in the other video, like you got a home to live in, you have food on the table, and you got clothes on your back, and that was the end of motherhood for her. She didn't think about the person. And I told her, like, it's not too late. We're still here. It's not like you just skip over us and go to grandchildren. We're still here. And she acknowledged that. And she started talking about how she was treated. And as she started saying things, I started saying things that were my grandmother's version of the story, things that my grandmother has told me for freaking forever. I started comparing things that my aunts have told me, and my mom is like, well, certain things she confirmed that my aunt said, and then or aunt said that happened, and then she told the missing pieces of the stories that my grandmother gave me. Like, my mind is still blown. I don't completely remember everything that I said in the first, and I tried looking back and I still don't remember. um, I think it's because my brain is just like exploding. But I don't remember everything I said in the first Shadowworks video, but I believe I talked about my mom saying that my grandmother, was, abusive or negligent in some way. And it's not my story to tell, but my mom talked about how she wasn't just negligent, as in she left her in a house by herself, left her on her own to fend for herself. And she ended up getting pregnant um, because someone was, in her ear. And my grandma told me, for quite some time that she had an abortion or whatever at an early age, that she took her to get an abortion when she was like 13, 14. And my mom was like, I was 12 years old. And I couldn't stomach that, because she said she was 12 years old and that this person would bring her food and bring her. She said every day in school that everyone made fun of her. There was no running water in the house. And my papa thought that all of the girls were with my grandmother. And my grandmother was off with another man, like just gone, left her children there. And she said that all the kids made fun of her. She was so skinny, she had to pin her clothes up. The only time she ate was at school. And they would make fun of her that she stank. And she didn't have no soap. She didn't have deodorant. She didn't have food. And she's like, on the weekends, some of the neighbors would be nice and maybe give her some leftovers or come bring her a canned good or something like that, because they knew that her mom wasn't around. And that was it. Like, just complete negligence. And that the only reason, and this is what makes perfect sense, she has no reason to lie about it. She said she was 12 years old and she was showing. She was already 6 months along when the nurse, when they're like, yo, this little girl looks pregnant. And she was like, obviously CPS got involved, because why is a child pregnant? And when they questioned my grandmother about it, she lied and told them that she had a boyfriend or whatever, and that she wasn't listening, and this, that, and the other. And she said that they took her to a facility where they induced her. And, basically what they call a medical abortion, but they basically induce her and take the baby out and kill it or whatever. Something like that. But all of that, she's experiencing all of this at 12 years old. And she was like, I went to that facility by myself. My mom sat outside in the car. The state took me and like gave a ride to the both of them. And that my grandmother sat outside in the car. And when they came back, she stayed home for all of 10 minutes while the social worker and stuff was there, and went back up the street and never talked to her again. And she was like, I was bleeding all over the place. I had the napkins and stuff from the hospital, and when that ran out, I didn't have any and I had to go steal. She was like, I was using towels and stuff, and then I had to go steal from other people in town when I went to school. And she's like, some of my friends was trying to give me, pads and stuff like that. And it's just like, I can't. It like, and that's just one part of it, but it like doesn't even fit in my head. But I can't deny it because it makes sense. It makes sense about why, in the beginning, even in the beginning of my life, my mom ain't never called my grandmother mom. She always called her by her name. And I always wondered about that, like, why are they calling her by their name? And then just a piece, like a little bit, not to say every single thing that she said, but it's like, I asked her, because my grandma always told me these stories about, like how violent she was when she was younger, and how she always had a knife on her, and that she was, in the canteen or the juke joint or whatever, slicing people up. that was approaching her. And so all of a sudden, like, my light bulb came on, and I was like, so what about all them stories? Where were y'all at? Because it occurred to me, my grandmother had her first child at 15 years old. So, like, if you had your first one at 15, my grandma got 6 kids. Like, she had 2 before she even got married, then turned around and had 4 more with my pop. So it's like, hold on a second, where were y'all at? And my mom was like, we was sitting on the bench. The bar had a bench when you come in the entrance. We was sitting on the bench, like, seeing the whole thing. And I'm gonna stop there because it gets even worse than you stabbing people and going on carrying on in front of your children. It was worse. It was far worse. Like, my brains are spilling out right now because I always felt like something was off. I always felt like my grandma wasn't telling the whole truth. And the more I dug in the shadow work, the more I'm just like, there's some missing pieces here. There's missing pieces here. The more I learn about others, her other siblings, and how everybody's in the military, everybody's got some sort of college education, everybody's doing their thing, and it's like, here she is, the only one, and the oldest. And it's just, my mind is still blown. But it's like, now I see the whole picture of who my mom really is, and I see, like, a lot of the things that she didn't mean harm. She just didn't know any better. And that's interesting. I just realized, like, we're in all of this retrograde stuff. Maybe that's why it all came up. But I can't tell you, like, how humbling it is to have a parent, like, cry on your shoulder. Like, I felt like I was being the mom to her, but in an emotional way, because sometimes I have, as an adult, felt like I'm being the mom to her when she makes irresponsible decisions in a lot of ways. But it's like, for the first time, I was emotionally being a mom and a daughter to her at the same time. And I just feel incredibly grateful, and I'm glad that I didn't, like, disown and completely walk away and stay away and, be in isolation from them. I've distanced myself, but it's like, I think I would have never have gotten to this if I had closed the door in the way that I wanted to. I was directed not to by my ancestors, and I see why, because there is so much more to the picture. Even, the fact that, now, I knew my great grandma pretty well, but it's like, my mom actually didn't. And I remember my grandma telling me that my great grandmom hated her, and that she was mean to her kids, and everyone else's kids were there having fun, and that she would make her children sit in the floor or not feed them lunch and things like that. And my mom's like, that's a lie. And she's like, I only went over there a couple of times. And she was like, but she never treated me different. She treated all of us the same. And she was like, she was the one that didn't want us over there. Like, my mom literally suffered. All of my family's pretty much well off and doing quite well for themselves. And it's like, here's my grandma only worried about herself. And she's like, she never worked a day in her life. All she did, and also my mom found out that she was getting welfare and food stamps and child support for her, but living up the road, using the benefits for herself, and not taking care of her at all, not making sure she had her needs and necessities at all. And it makes sense because she kind of glorifies people in my family who do the same thing. And my mom said that she made up her mind back then that she was never going to ever, ever, ever depend on welfare. She was never going to treat her children that way. She would get up and work, and my mom did work, indeed. And I've always said that she's like the most hardworking person that I know, that she's, working 2 shifts and sometimes 3. I mean, 2 jobs and sometimes 3. Just up, working, working, working. And I realize where it comes from now. But ouch. But I realize where it comes from, and Like it just makes so much sense. And it's just so sad. Like I just feel so sad for her that you have all of this wonderful family that you never even got to know because your mom isolated you. Like they lived in it. Y'all hearing these stories, but they lived in a country, like non-transportation, like you walking a couple miles of school and stuff like that. And she would talk about how in the summertime, at least she had the opportunity to go pick, you know, go pick tomatoes or strawberries or whatever the hell people was growing. She would go pick on the field so that she could make some money for the day and be able to buy a little bit of food. Or sometimes they would, even though you picked it, they would like give you a discount on the food that you picked. Or some people would go back and pick for themselves after they were done working or whatever. And I don't want to tell every single thing, but it just like my mind is just spilling out because it's like it's an incredible amount of pain for a child to carry and then to turn around and have children like right away. Like my mom really, if she would have had like good sense, like other words, if she would have been careful and did not get pregnant, like I think that she might have had time to heal herself and really build herself up and be a different mother, but she didn't. She had me at 20 years old, so she didn't really have time to like collect herself. And she was like, everywhere I looked, everybody called me a whore. Everybody called me a slut. Everybody, she's like, my mom told everyone that. And I remember my aunt saying that about my mom. I grew up my entire life thinking that about my mom and not understanding where the behavior came from. And she was like, I learned to do what my sisters were doing because I was hungry. And she's like, you don't understand what it's like to be hungry. And I was like, why didn't you never tell your dad? And she was like, he called my mom. And she would give her version of the story. And she was like, and when he came to pick up, he would just see that basically that my grandmother wasn't there and never thought twice about it. Like she never mentioned anything because she was scared of my grandmama. She was like, my grandmom used to beat her up. She didn't use the word beat like with the belt. She was fist fighting her, like beating her up. And she was like, so she never once said nothing to my papa. When he came through to pick up his daughters or whatever for the weekend, she just went and ate all she could with her stepmother, ate everything she could. And she was like, there's a talk about them getting custody at some point in time, or him taking custody, and my grandmom fought him on it because she wanted her check. And she knew she wasn't going to get none of them benefits. And she's like, that's what, it's just laziness that caused her to mistreat her children just to get welfare check. Like no ambition, no nothing. It just, oh my God, it hurts. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. But it hurts in like another way because it's like I put this woman on a pedestal my whole life thinking this is the woman that changed my diapers, only to find out that you're changing my diapers and all this stuff because my mom got a check for me in the beginning, being someone that was obviously under the poverty level. Like it was never free. My mom was always paying her. And not that she wouldn't have done it without pay. Well, actually, she wouldn't have. My mom said never did she ever watch y'all without me paying her, ever. So the person that I thought was like a cute, loving grandmom is just not. And I always suspected that. It's just in people's undertones and the words that they choose when they speak that kind of tell you that there's more to the story, more that they don't want to admit. But it's just like my brain is spilling out right now. It is a lot. Like a whole lot. My brain is bursting. Like I was literally sitting there in feeling every emotion while my mom was saying that, like wanting to cry for her, feeling extremely sad, feeling the depression, feeling angry about how a mother could treat their child that way and feeling disgusted. My stomach was flipped over. I kind of wanted to throw up. It was just repulsive, the things that she was saying, and disgusting. I don't know. I just felt like my mouth was open and it's just so much to process. But it's like at the same time that I was experiencing that, listening to her, it's like I'm realizing it's because I did the shadow work. It's because I did the work that this is even coming to the light. This is the end of it. Like this is the finish line. Because my mom would have went to her grave with that stuff in her heart. If I not if I had distanced myself from her, if I had stopped the shadow work to and like completely come to a halt and stop my own growth, like if I wouldn't be on this path, she would have took that shit to the grave with her and never said nothing. Like this is what it is to break generational curses. This is what it is. This is the end because it can no longer continue because I knew to do the work, but now I know the whole picture. I know what won't be happening to my children now that I know what happened to her. And I knew quite a bit about what happened to my grandmother, but I realized that it's her personality, is who she is, that her mother misunderstood her, but she just was this person, just selfish, wanting to do what she wanted to do. She didn't want to listen. And the proof is in the rest of the children. Like there's people in my family who are part of the WNBA. There are people, and I'm talking about my generation. Well, like, okay, my second cousins and then my mom's cousins and their children. It's like one of my cousins, her daughter's in the WNBA, and her son is a professional baseball player. There's money there. There's success. There's the fruit of good parenting, of love, of kindness, of all this other things, the opposite of what we grew up in. And my grandmom act like as if everyone excludes us and as if everybody's stingy and they all have money and they don't want to share it. And it's not true. Oh my God. Like I can't even deal with this type of evil. Like thinking that I fed this type of evil and defended this type of evil without knowing that it's evilness, like without knowing its core. And my mom literally called her the monster in the closet, like she's been the monster in her closet for years and years and years. And she said a couple of years ago, I wrote a letter and she's like, it took me 10 pages. I wrote that letter and I sent it to her and I decided that she was no longer going to be in my closet. And the funny thing is, my grandmom called me and told me that my mom sent a letter and that she's still mad at her after all of these years about stuff that happened way back in the past and never once told me what it was. Never once. But I can't imagine that if my child had something good to say about me, that it would take them 10 pages to say so. I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful that my mom opened up. I'm grateful for the whole entire thing, even if my brain is just like, what the fuck right now? Like it's literally rewiring itself. Um, I've been talking a minute. I'm still just so shocked that it makes so sense. Like there was not so much sense. There's nothing there that I would even have to refute. Like there's nothing there that I would have to say, well, maybe, just maybe, but nah. Like there is no maybe. It makes perfect sense about this person that I thought was just everything. Anyway, I feel like I can move on to the next level in my life as a different woman. I just want to encourage, lastly, I'm not going to talk too much longer. I just want to encourage anyone who's been thinking about shadow work, anyone who has stopped, anyone who has resisted is worth the effort that you put into it. It truly is. Have a good one.